Well, hello, you chunky monkeys. Welcome to Mean Age Daydream with me, your beautiful bald host, Brian McWilliams, coming at you today and looking up with beauty at what could just become the statue of socialism in New York City. That's going to be our primary topic today. Of course, I live in Los Angeles, but as somebody that appreciates what New York City used to be, what it represented as one of the most impressive capitalist cities in the world before Democrats got their grubby hands on it. It's certainly sad to see the downfall, but we're going to talk about that today. We're going to talk about what's going on with Trump cursing out Israel and how wonderful that was. And we'll also talk about the Harvard Business Review and some of the more DEI-centric ideas they have in regards to what does or does not get in there. So you may have noticed I am still very stuffed up. I had a cold last week and it's still hanging on, which stinks, but we will persevere and power through this. If you want to help me persevere and power through, of course, you can go to our Patreon, patreon.com/Lions of Liberty or lionsofliberty.locals.com. And don't forget, guys, we have multiple shows on the Lions of Liberty Network. So please subscribe to the entire feed, go to the podcast feed, go to the YouTube, etc. We did our show Politics on Monday, and that aired on Tuesday. For the rest of you on the listening side of things, Lou Perez, who has now joined the network, his show is going to debut on, or his show is going to publish Friday. We thought because of the timing of it, talking about Trump, Israel, the ceasefire that wasn't. If you want to hear us talk about that, go back and listen to that show on Tuesday. And yeah, man, crazy times. Anyway, so let's get into it. First things first, New York City held their primary last night for the Democrat side of things, and it came down to two gentlemen, one of whom you're very well acquainted with, one Andrew Cuomo, the same Andrew Cuomo through which the more idiotic side of the liberal spectrum, the Rachel Maddows of the world, the Steve Colberts of the world, had referred to themselves as Cuomo-sexuals, I believe. This man who was shoved down our throats during COVID because he allegedly was the mayor doing the most, taking all the right actions, right? The sit down he would have with his brother, the now embarrassed Chris Cuomo, who Dave Smith absolutely destroyed in a debate over COVID policies, had him on a regular basis. This, of course, caused the ouster of Chris Cuomo eventually. But Andrew Cuomo himself was ousted. Why? Well, it wasn't because of his complete ineptitude in dealing with COVID. It wasn't because of the lies. It wasn't because he took old people out of hospitals and shoved them into old folks' homes where they then spread COVID among the most vulnerable population, aka the only vulnerable population, if you're not counting people with comorbidities, aka people that were like 90. Well, Cuomo basically killed your grandma, killed your uncle, killed whoever it was that was in that old folks' home. So he gets the boot. And yet, the best the Democrats can do in New York is retread Cuomo, who was boosted with millions and millions of dollars in campaign financing because he represents, I guess, the Democrat alternative that's somewhat reasonable from an economic and financial perspective for New Yorkers, even though his government was still badly run and massively expensive and expansive, let's not forget. Or, and I know I'm going to mess this guy's name up, Zohran Mamdani. Zohran Mamdani. This is the socialist Democrat turd that the more extreme side of things is pushing, that the economically illiterate are advocates for. This is a man who is a son of a Columbia professor, and that professor's focus is the most DEI-centric nonsense you've ever heard. You know, the politics of color, and also just degrees that are at this point in time, hopefully being phased out of our cultural lexicon. But his son majored in African studies after going to a very small, very Oberlin-like college in Maine. So his Muslim son has an African studies major, comes back, basically does nothing in regards to real work, gets into politics, somehow gets himself elected as an assemblyman in New York, pushing leftist policy matters, and now looks to be on the precipice of becoming a mayor of New York, because now people have two options. Now, look, in New York, they voted Republican before. Let's not forget about Rudy Giuliani, old Suffering Succotash Giuliani, who Ron Paul destroyed in debate. Let's not forget Giuliani was, in fact, a Republican, and that there is and could be some hunger for a swing back to more Republican ideals in a city that, just like California, has been bleeding people that are middle class, upper middle class, especially if you're not the ultra rich that can absorb the massive tax hikes and tax hikes and provide some sort of security for yourself living in some expensive building, some high rise that you've got a doorman, security, etc., to protect you from the mobs of violence and homeless and et cetera that do rove the streets of New York at this point in time, just like here in Los Angeles. Well, these people are leaving. The middle class are leaving New York. So the people that remain could turn to a Republican. And I have to Google. I don't even know who's running for Republican. New York City Republican mayor. He's gotten so little to talk about. I don't even know. Even Googling. Okay. Curtis Sliwa. Anybody? A good Sliwing? Well, Curtis Sliwa apparently is the guy. Oh, no. He's the guy that founded the nonprofit Guardian Angels. Hilarious. So Eric Adams gets ousted because of a scandal taking, airplane tickets on Turkish Airlines or something like that. And of course, also Eric Adams was ousted because he had decided that he wanted to crack down on immigrants. Apparently was seen as cozying up to Trump, and maybe appropriately so, because they wanted the DOJ to drop charges. Curtis Sliwa, the Guardian Angels, if you don't know who the Guardian Angels are, they're the group that marches around in those maroon berets or berets and is, I don't know what you'd call it, a paramilitary grandstanding organization. That's the best thing I can think of them. That's interesting that he would be the candidate, because that makes you think, okay, law and order. But I can't see a side-by-side being decided between this beret-wearing nutcase and a Democrat socialist that's promising everything under the sun and more, all failed policies I'm going to go through in a second, when it comes down to the voters of New York City, many of whom are complete idiots, let's not forget, many of whom are, in fact, probably naturalized citizens, many of whom have come from backgrounds that are socialist favorable, and many of whom are on the poorer side of the spectrum, living in rent-controlled apartments or low-rent apartments that are enticed by the promises that a Democrat socialist would make, as opposed to somebody like a Sliwa, who's probably going to come out there and, despite calling for law and order, which probably would appeal to a lot of more people than we'd think, is not going to be promising economic bounty, and milk flowing from the government tit. So what has Mamdani promised? Oh, and by the way, speaking of tits, Emily Ratajkowski, who you might best remember for having big, fat, naked tits in the, White Lines video? Well, she also made a video coming out and saying that she supports Zohran. So, you've clearly got airheads that have no benefit to humanity other than certain attributes flocking together in this circumstance. So anyway, what does Zohran believe? Well, let's go through a couple of his finer points here. Number one is that the man is primarily run on this concept that he will freeze all the rents. He's done videos about this. This is his big promise. He will freeze the rents in New York. Now, that is fundamentally retarded. It never works. Place controls don't work, and simply takes a lot of people that might make improvements, might make benefits to, let's say, a housing market, might be considering building new housing, in a jam where they're not going to want to upgrade anything. They're not going to want to fix anything. They're not going to want to take care of tenants. They're not going to want to improve anything in that residency, because now it's almost a losing proposition, right? Considering the amount of money you have to pay on property taxes, considering the amount of benefit there is for renters and trying to get people out of apartments in New York City, considering the amount of tax you have on top of just your basic way of living, considering the fact that there's all sorts of inheritance taxes, you're looking at a proposition where if you freeze the rent, people are going to go, well, is it even a benefit to me to do this, to rent this anymore? I mean, like we're talking about, when it comes to red tape and taxation and regulation of what you can charge to live somewhere, there's a reason why here in Los Angeles, just as in New York, there is a housing crisis. And it's because it costs so much to build housing because of the regulations and the taxes and the union labor and everything else. It costs so much to build housing that then if you're going to tell me I can't even charge a market rate that will make my money back and possibly provide a profit, why would I do it? And the fact that the cost of living has gone up so exponentially for everything and nationwide for everyone, coming out of a recession and possibly going back into a recession, we don't know yet, but economic factors certainly look like we might be playing with fire there. Well, again, if you're going to freeze the rents, that benefits people that are living in the houses, great, but the landlords are going to go, why am I going to play this game? It's a proven failure time and time again, and that's what this guy is prophesizing. That's so funny. These socialist losers in the comments on YouTube are getting all upset. Oh, cry me a river with socialists. So that's one promise, right? He also wants to raise taxes on the 1% of New Yorkers. They're paying all the taxes already. Jesus, where did he get such a brilliant idea from, huh? Oh, God. It's like he's taking a page out of the Bernie book, which also doesn't work. Because as I mentioned earlier, you already have people fleeing New York City that pay the high taxes. So what? You're going to double down, triple down on these people? You're going to go even farther down the rabbit hole of trying to drive them out? Why are they going to stay at a certain point in time? You're going to just go to somewhere like a Delaware. You're going to go somewhere like a Florida. You're going to go to Texas, which a lot of these people are going to in general. Again, similar to California. And you've also got New York being the financial capital of the world. So if you have a guy that hates finance, that hates the rich, that hates all these things, why would you stay there? Why would you want to stay there? I mean, it's funny too. I'm looking at this hilarious tweet from AOC because obviously AOC is a huge fan of this guy and all of his lies and all these promises. And she tweeted out, "Your dedication to an affordable, welcoming, and safe New York City where working families have a shot has inspired people across the city." The irony is that everywhere these socialist tactics and socialist policies have been put into place has turned out to be less safe, highly dangerous, unreliable as far as getting goods, getting services. Oh, by the way, I forgot to mention, this idiot also wants to make city-run grocery stores. Everywhere you've ever tried in the history of mankind to run city-owned grocery stores, it's failed miserably. It will fail miserably again. I can promise you. This is what's so amazing to me. I mean, are New Yorkers so historically illiterate? I mean, this man is either a complete moron, which is possible, but I don't think he is, or intentionally knows that he's saying bullshit. He knows what he's selling is a lie because there's no historical precedent for it ever being a success. Flat out. If you have price controls, if you have food controls, if you have the government taking over the basic services, well, that is what has led all these countries like Venezuela, like the Weimar Republic in Germany, all these different countries that were popular, that were profitable, have gone down this road. I mean, even Argentina. Look at Brazil right now. Look, you're going down a road where once you take the path of socialism, you see problems crop up across the entire spectrum. And it's not just that this guy has no understanding of basic economics. It's that you say, okay, this is the foundation of his platform. These horrible ideas. What else is going to happen? This guy's got zero experience. He was an assemblyman, which is basically a non-power position. You're an assemblyman who has no experience actually running a massive government, overseeing the largest police force, I think, in the world. How are you going to expect him to actually run a city? And especially after he's come out, talking about the police force, calling the police force, the most racist, bigoted, blah, 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 threat to humanity. It's not going to work out well, New York City. It's not going to work out well for you. And I'm fascinated to watch because you see what's happened in Chicago, which had Lori Lightfoot, one of the worst mayors that's ever been in the history of our country, Lori Lightfoot, who drove that city to be one of the murder capitals of the world by destroying economics, destroying education systems. She got ousted. Oh, and also, let's not forget, massive COVID lockdown fan. She gets booted, and then they elect an even farther Democrat socialist mayor who now has lost complete confidence of any of the voting public. Everything in Chicago has gotten 15 times worse than it was under Lori Lightfoot. And the question is, are these people going to do it again? New York, did you not see Chicago? Do you not know what happens? You have people in Chicago. You have newspapers in Chicago writing about this circumstance and going, didn't you see what they did to us? Why would you do this again? It's unbelievable to me. But it goes to show you, and what somebody had raised, the interesting point of, okay, is this voter demographic change? Is this what the Democrats wanted? Because you bring in all these people, you give them the right to vote, you naturalize them, it changes the entire demographics and the entire voter population of a city. And now when you have somebody coming out promising all this socialist bullshit, they just go, okay, sure, sounds good. Yep, we're in favor of socialism. I mean, it's wow. It's wow levels of ignorance. It's wow levels of just an incomprehension of how badly government fucks everything it touches up and how these promises will never come true. You can make them, you can put them in place. It's just going to make all of your housing problems a million times worse. It's going to make your city less safe. It's going to drive out people that actually pay the taxes, that want to move things forward. And it's going to be a city of layabout. That's what's going to happen. That's what's going to happen. Yeah. Good luck to you. Good luck to all of you. Okay. So that's point one. Right now, Donald Trump is at the NATO convention, I don't know, confab, whatever, the summit, talking to other world leaders. Now, we just saw Donald Trump hilariously and wonderfully talk about Israel and Iran, basically saying they don't know what the fuck they're doing. Now, I would argue that Israel does, in fact, know what the fuck it's doing. Israel knows that it's fucking over the United States. Israel knows that it took actions to bring the United States onto the precipice of war with Iran. It knows that it has lied to the international community for the last 3 decades about how close Iran is to having a nuke. They know how much that they hack into our services and use blackmail, and they're the number one cybersecurity threat to the United States, as evidenced by our own intelligence services telling us this. We know all about Israel, and they know what the fuck they're doing. What they're doing is trying to fuck the United States into getting into a war with Iran, into having their back and continuously funding them, which makes no sense. They've got a space program, for fuck's sakes. If you have a space program, if you've got a budget surplus, which Israel does, you should not be getting money from a country that has a $36 trillion budget deficit. And especially when the mass majority of Americans do not want war with Iran. They didn't want it the last time it came up. They didn't want a war with Iraq, by the way. We were lied into that with WMD nonsense. And guess what? We were lied into it again this time. And all for nothing. I said the only benefit of this entire circumstance would be if the United States finally told Israel to fuck off and we're not funding you anymore. And look, you're on your own. That's it. We're done with you here. We've had enough lies. We've had enough backstabbing. We've had enough, military operations that you go on and shoot your wad, knowing that Big Brother United States is going to back you up. I hope to God that'll happen, but it won't, because too many of our politicians are bought and paid for by AIPAC and by lobbyists. Too many of our politicians are completely, Ted Cruz, for Christ's sakes, telling people that he literally gets into the Senate just to be a voice for Israel. And this is psychotic behavior. But despite all of this happening, we have Donald Trump and the United Nations, by the way, the UN just voted, not the United Nations, NATO just gave $40 billion more dollars to Ukraine. So, I would be remiss if I screamed and yelled about us backing Israel in its fight against Iran without also talking about the fact that NATO, which the United States is still the primary funder, even though Donald Trump apparently right now, I was trying to see some of his commentary in real time before I jumped on here, but just not enough reporting on it. NATO, which is still primarily backed by the United States from a funding perspective, is giving away billions of dollars to Ukraine in a war that we should also have no part in. It's been going on for two damn years. It's people that still, are back in the military industrial complex, are backing the Boeings, the Lockheed Martins, the Northrop Grummons of the world, which again fill these politicians' pants with all sorts of gold doubloons. There's no fucking good reason at all for us to be engaging and supporting Ukraine at this point in time. Zero. That war needs to end. We should have never funded it from the get-go, and we should not be providing them with, again, similar to how we're not only providing Israel with fundamental intelligence services and tactical services and weapons. But the fact that we dropped the bombs, of course, in Iran is ridiculous. And now it's reporting that they did nothing. Now, I don't know if that's true or false. This is from a CNN story earlier today. But apparently the nuclear facilities were not obliterated. And as we were joking about in politics, they got all the nuke material out in their little fanny packs beforehand anyway. So we go out there, we take an act of war against another nation that has no threat to us. And I'm sorry, idiots. No, Iran presents a zero threat to the United States. They're not going to launch nukes that are proactive on Israel. It's not going to happen because they would be obliterated and wiped off the face of the planet. And human nature, human self-interest, does still apply to the leaders in Iran. You can say that their religious regime, well, fine, that might be something they believe in, but at the end of the day, they still want to live and they still want to run their country. With Ukraine, we've got a situation where we're, again, basically at war with Russia because NATO is providing weaponry. They're providing tactical support. They're providing, air intelligence. They're providing on-the-ground intelligence, providing on-the-ground training. We have troops in these countries that are bordering it. It's ridiculous. It's insane. And yet, give them $40 billion more. For what? To continue this bullshit, to continue to raise a generation of Ukrainian men to the ground so that we can go in and build it up and the people that are invested in this now can make more money rebuilding Ukraine on the backs of the American taxpayer and NATO? Sounds great. It's just, it really is. The fundamental truth is that the state of war is always intended to continue. You can pretend that there are people that are trying to vie for peace, but the people that are trying to vie for peace are not in power. Maybe it's because so many psychopaths and sociopaths and fucking liars and socialist mongos are the ones that are trying to get the power to begin with. But, the everyday person who just wants to be left alone seems to not be capable of getting power. Now, I know there's a lot of factors behind that. There's a lot of funding that goes into it by powerful forces and lobbyists and giant capital-based groups that have a lot of interest in rebuilding these countries or keeping regulations high in one way or the other. I know all that. But it is still amazing to me that these people exist and, like a Lindsey Graham, can blatantly sell their own country out. Lindsey Graham, who's cheering on war with Iran, who can go to Ukraine just before bombs are dropped on Russian bombers, like before the giant drone attack, and go to Ukraine and stump for us to get in, continue back that war. This man who clearly has foreign interest and foreign affairs far more listed, on his top 3 list of things to do. Number 1, secret closeted sex in the restroom with the male prostitute, probably. Number 2, back Ukraine. Number 3, back Israel. And you could probably swap 2 and the 3 there. Nowhere on that list is American interest. And yet he gets reelected. This is one of the confusions. And is it just that we don't have options, that it's impossible to get to the position of power, to get on the ballot, to get enough name recognition without all this money to get elected? Perhaps. Thomas Massey, he's one that came up out of nowhere that people oppose vehemently from the AIPAC side of things, from the big money side of things, but enough people, rational people, support him to keep him in office. Where are the rational people when it comes to voting for a Lindsey Graham or a Ted Cruz or any of these, Israel flag, Ukraine flag wearing psychos that are stumping for war nonstop in our government, or they're promising pie in the sky bullshit that has zero chance of ever coming to fruition, and if it ever did, would drive your city into the dirt? Where are the rational people? There is a war on critical thinking right now. It's been going on for the past 40 years. It's going on in our school systems intentionally. They used to teach critical thinking. It was one of the primary things that was taught. And now it's one of the things they tell you not to do. You've got organizations that's a conglomerate between educational organizations and media organizations. Brian Stetler, that little pig fucker, did a long story about this on CNN before he got fired and then somehow rehired, where he went into schools talking about how wonderful it was. They were teaching children what to believe and what not to believe, to be skeptical of what they read online and only to go for trusted sources. That entire exercise is designed to stop you from thinking, designed to stop you from questioning what's going out, what you're being presented with from a mainstream narrative, from your academic institutions that are combined with the media, that are combined with working intensely with government. All of this shit is designed to make you stop thinking and to only believe the one narrative and only believe the quote unquote trusted sources, which have been fucking wrong about everything for the past 40 years. But yet you're supposed to believe them. Just like we're supposed to believe that Iran is days or weeks or months away from having a nuke. Just like we're supposed to believe that COVID would kill you and kill your kid and kill your dog instantly if you walked outside without 4 masks on and didn't get 18 jabs that are going to make your heart explode. All of these lies. And yet people don't seem to be able to come around to the very rational ability to believe what's in front of your face and read a history book and go, oh, none of this works. This is all a clown game. We're all being played for fools. Can somebody just get in here that's not going to lie to my face? It's amazing to me. I mean, it is amazing to me. Anyway, enough of that rant. Last thing here, and we'll wrap up the show here, is that the the once venerated Harvard Business Review. Oh, by the way, big shout out to Javier Milei, by the way. Argentina just outgrew China by 5.8%. And of course, Javier Milei has gone anti-democrat socialist in every possible way, shape, or form, eliminating his country's debt and now having a budget surplus, growth across the entire economic spectrum there, and a big opportunity, I'd say. One of the best opportunity-based economies that is currently available, run by Javier Milei. Okay, last thing here is that the Harvard Law Review, not Business Review, which was viewed for a long time as the nation's leading academic legal journal, has been judging submissions based in part on whether they promote DEI values rather than scholarly merit. And this is taken directly from the editorial guidelines for the Harvard Law Review. And this, by the way, speaks to a large extent on where we are and how we got to where we are as a nation, because many of the the top law schools have embraced this DEI leftist activist philosophy rather than the fundamental cores of what the law is supposed to be. And that, of course, bleeds through to what you see the ACLU engaging with, right? Like I was just reading an article today that last year, I think it was last year or 2 years ago, the ACLU got a $15 million grant from an LGBTQIA, et cetera, affiliated group, which is why you see them now going hard and suing every trans thing to get trans male prisoners put into female prisons and all these sorts of psychotic rights infringing cases where they're trying to essentially sue to have one small minority's rights placed above those established rights of other individuals. Well, now you know why. You follow the money. So you have to wonder what is driving this? Is it pure academic lust and activism in academia that's leading these law programs to push this DEI shit and activism? But here's what the Harvard Law Review now has as one of its tenets in these guidelines. So impact. Does the article address an issue or provide a solution that can help promote DEI values? Yes, this is a question and answer of somebody that's reviewing a submission. Yes, the article took very seriously both the causes of racial disparities in criminal law and the impacts of those disparities. It mentioned the historical reasons for those disparities and was focused on proposing a more effective policy solution to address racial disparities in criminal law. Now, I will go out and say flat out, I do agree in addressing racial disparities if those disparities come from something within the legal system that targets a racial minority. Nobody wants that. We want a revamping of the justice system, right? We want more equal treatment under the law. We want to erase a lot of these ticky-tack horrible laws that are on the books. I mean, the war on drugs is a perfect example. Disproportionately impacts certain racial communities, as does over-policing. I mean, these are circumstances that, yes, should be looked at, but as a basic tenet of whether or not to take a submission into the law review should not be whether or not the article addresses a DEI topic. I mean, especially in this day and age when everything has been put into this lens to continue pushing this nonsense and to make it a focus and a primary focus that could supersede other better works, other better topics that could impact millions of people, right? If we're talking about legal matters and revamping of the justice system overall, to focus on this kind of shit, which is so easily, by the way, waylaid, taken advantage of. I mean, we have so many examples of the the amount of activist nonsense that gets published in scientific, in law journals. It's leaning into the ridiculous and leaving out what could be a viable contribution. It's similar to hate speech laws, right? The law exists that says you're not allowed to go and beat someone or shoot someone or do whatever it is. You don't need to say, well, the hate speech law makes it worse. Similarly, if you're talking about a review here and from a high-level law paper, the standard should be, does it make a cogent argument that moves the bar, that changes the law, that has to be argued, regardless of who it affects racially, right? If a law specifically impacts the people, talk about the law first, and then you could talk about who it impacts. Don't lead with who it impacts and then design, shit to change the law because you're trying to target that specific area. Because without a doubt, if you know that the Harvard Law Review is intentionally looking for DEI-centric shit, you're going to have people that are only focused on DEI-centric shit, which doesn't include the broader spectrum of law. And that's not okay. That's not a good thing. This is how you get a shift in this direction, and you get these wacky ass ideas and wacky ass platforms because everybody's trying to find a way to grift the system. This is encouraging grift rather than intellectual honesty and actual submissions that have a chance to change things for the better. I'll leave it at that. All right, guys, thank you so much for tuning in, even you socialist Democrats. You can find us, of course, at the Lions of Liberty Network. All of our shows are on there. You can follow us on Twitter, on anywhere your podcasts to listen to, on YouTube, on Rumble. We're getting our Kick set up. We're doing that on BitChute, everywhere you want to be. And, of course, if you want to support us, go to patreon.com/Lions of Liberty or lionsofliberty.locals.com. All right. Have a good one from me, Brian McWilliams, from the Lions of Liberty Network and from Mean Age Daydream. Keep those electric eyes on me, babe, and keep that ray gun to my head. I will see you.